front line of policing is loud, but the voices behind it, they're a lot louder and I think, frankly, a lot more interesting. Hi, I'm Bob Plaschke, and this is First Response. This is the #1 podcast that takes you behind the badge and uncovers real stories and experiences of first responders from all walks of life and the topics that shape public safety today. If you're curious about the guy or the gal behind the hero, and they are indeed truly heroes, and the topics that they care about, take a listen. This is kind of your front row seat to hearing some of the really interesting voices out there, and more importantly, the heroes. This podcast is sponsored by Pepperball, where I have the honor to serve as CEO. Pepperball creates non-lethal alternatives to guns police use to keep themselves and the public safe. Today, guys and gals, this is a super exciting podcast. I am joined by Rajiv Maan, who spent 20 plus years in the FBI and 31 years in law enforcement. Rajiv, who was born in the Fiji Islands and then grew up in a small town in Northern California, has served a number of roles in cybersecurity and anti-terrorism groups across the U.S. and across the world, with a posting in Jordan and most recently in Israel. Such a fascinating individual, and I'm super excited to get started with this one. So, Rajiv, the first question is, I've been watching Homeland on Netflix. I've been on all my flights, and I'm my wife's a big fan of, I think it's called FBI. How much of what we see on TV is the truth or is real, and how much of it is Hollywood?
So some of the plots can be real or close, but the reality is, look, we're very methodical. The whole goal is not to blow up things and get people killed in the process. The whole goal is to stop the event before it starts. So there's a lot of plots that were stopped that we'll probably never know about, because that's a win for us in the counterterrorism world, where if the event happens, things explode, people die, that is a catastrophic failure for us. Plots, yes, the action and some of those things similar, but possibly true, right? But not the explosions and things like that.
Well, to your point, the success for you is that nothing happens, right? Which is, it's funny. It's completely the opposite of what we see or talk about on this kind of a local, U.S. day-to-day patrol, right? Where they're actually sent out to deal with something that is happening, where your entire focus is to prevent it from ever happening.
That's correct. In the counterterrorism world, the prevention was the biggest thing, right? If you think about it, back in 9/11, where the event did happen, thousands of people perished, and that is a catastrophic failure for us. When I was working counterterrorism, we will try to stop 100% of these things before they happen. So there's an investigation going on. As soon as we get enough evidence against the subject, that's when we decide at what point do we arrest. Right? Is the risk too high, or can we maintain the risk and let it play out a little bit longer before we make the arrest?
I think about what you do and the number of what you and your counterparts in the FBI do. It must be a little bit scary as a citizen to think about the number of incidents that you prevented. They must be in the hundreds. I mean, there must be, and never reported. So no one ever really knows that level of that danger was there.
That's correct. I mean, if you think about it, we are 25 years away from 9/11. So a lot has happened between now and going all the way back. And some of the threats are stopped overseas. We work with overseas partners. The U.S. military was robust overseas, and some of the times stopped these threats from coming in to the U.S. The whole idea was not for it to happen here. Then somewhere along the line, it changed to homegrown, inspired terrorist. And again, once we learn of it, we will ramp up resources and work on that problem set until we can get a good mitigation strategy and mitigate it before it's carried out.
The type of person you're dealing with is very different, and the type of organizations that you're dealing with are very different than what a normal police officer will see in the United States. It's someone who's addicted, or someone who is mentally challenged, or a couple going through a domestic dispute. They're very what I would call someone breaking and entering. They are kind of criminal acts, or at least they're threats to the public, but they're very isolated. Your audience, your group of folks is much more, I guess, sophisticated, much more, or am I just making that up?
No, much more lethal, I would say, right? The outcome of any terrorism attack is to kill as many people as they can. Whereas a drug user or domestic violence is between two people. Not that it's any less serious, but the idea is not to eliminate as many people as you can. For us, the risk is much higher, right? You have an individual that is either based on ideology or a warped ideology, wants to kill American citizens and people that are here to get a message across.
How do you deal with that personally? You've gone through decades of seeing people, to your point, who are very intentional, very and intentional on causing significant fatalities. Is that must be mentally challenging, I would imagine, over time to see that part of the world and to see it so persistent?
I look at it slightly differently. This is my home. This is, while we are the federal, we still live in cities and states and those things. And we're looking at the bigger picture. We're looking at protecting the United States and the way of life of our country and our Constitution. So it's a big responsibility to protect that. And if the event doesn't happen, right, there's not mass casualties. There's not much of those happening. It's not as bad as where a homicidal killer goes in and does a mass shooting.
Right.
Right. So the best way to describe it is it's your patriotism, it's your love of the country, love of the people that gets you excited every day to make sure you don't fail. Right. And it's personal for me and my team. We would go in and we would have that a mindset of nothing. If we fail, right, people will die, and that nothing is going to get past us.
It's an awesome amount of responsibility that you take. And again, I go back to my homeland experience where they, unfortunately in that case, in that particular show, there's a lot of, plots that aren't solved. And you see the burden, because you go in day to day, to your point of not failing, because failure is can be catastrophic. How did you manage your? Obviously love the mission and appreciate the mission, and I guess there's an adrenaline rush from that, and it's very positive when you're successful. How do you help your team manage through the, what I would call the stress of of that performance, or the potential, the possibility of failure?
So, the good part is we have a large team, right? We have a lot of different experts that come into our team. So if you look at our JTTF, it's not just FBI. There's sheriff's, police officers, there's SWAT on both sides. Everybody has a piece to play in there, right? Then you have the case agents and the obviously the attorneys, our U.S. attorneys, and it's an interesting dynamic that takes place. It's a good coalescing of people moving towards a direction. So it's not one person who bears the burden. My job my final job as a special agent in charge was to look at risk. are we doing enough to mitigate the risk, right? And so does the assistant special agent charge. His job is, or her job is, to look at the program. It's a supervisor who's more of a tactician, who looks at all the problem sets to make sure the agents or the task force officers are engaged into it 100%, right? So it is a lot of stress. So I've been there. I've been in every role. It is a lot of stress. And you don't think about it. I mean, my 20 plus years in the FBI went quickly. I don't know where it went. It feels like yesterday I was doing all of this.
Well, I mean, every day, this is one of the best examples of our taxpayer dollars at work, right? That every day you're going in with a mission to protect the United States, to protect the citizens from these types of attacks, which we know, the threat exists. We as citizens, and we live and go to bed every night without, thinking about it, where you wake up every day with a mission to prevent it. It's an incredibly noble and an incredibly it's a great thing, to your point, to do, to wake up and to go get it. So I assume you must have enjoyed that. That must be the one of the things you loved about the job.
It is. This job is a calling. It feels like a calling. For me, if you look at my background, I wanted to be a banker. I'm an immigrant here, and the reality was, we went from middle class to poorer class, and my whole goal was to pop back out of that, right? And what major would bring me out of that? And my thought was banking.
Right.
Until my neighbor took me for a ride along. And I say this, right? The universe or God, however you want to refer to this, does speak. When I went on a ride along, I found my calling. I couldn't get it out of my mind. I couldn't shake it out of my mind. It was for me. Now, this work is not for everyone, right? It is not for everyone. You have to run towards danger, not away from it. So same thing as a police officer, same thing as a firefighter, same thing as a soldier. You're running towards danger. For some of us, it excites us, right? We want to handle that situation.
Right.
Some people, it doesn't excite them, right? It's not a thing for them. Their calling is something else. It's not wrong or right. It's something else.
Just different. Yep.
Yeah, it is different. For me, the FBI was a great adventure. It was a great calling. And I enjoyed going to work every day. I'm sure I had bad days. I don't remember any, but I'm sure I've had them.
Oh, what a wonderful way to look back at your career. Now, if I'm right, you started off as a police officer, and then you applied to join the FBI. Is that how you do it?
Yeah. So I became a police officer in Yuba City, and then I applied for the FBI and California Department of Justice Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement. This was in 1999. At that point, the FBI has themes of what they're looking for. They know exactly what they're short on and how to grid those personnel. At that point, they were looking for people that spoke foreign languages. I speak two other ones, but I did not want to come underneath that program.
Okay.
And hard sciences. I have a business degree. So while I took the first, it's called phase one. I took the first phase one and passed that. They put my application on pause because they were looking for speakers of foreign language or science. So I went with the California Department of Justice Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement.
Okay.
Right. So, and I remember this day as like it was yesterday. It was 9/11. I worked till 2 a.m. that morning, 2 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I got home. I went to sleep. At 9 a.m., I got a call from our partners to turn on the TV and see what's happening in New York.
Right.
And it was surreal.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many hours I slept, but it was a few. I got dressed and I went to work. I didn't know what we were going to do, but I knew I had to go to work.
Right.
And at that point, shortly after, when the FBI was able to get their arms around this, I called my recruiter and I asked her. I said, "Are you still looking for hard sciences and speakers, or?" And she says, "Well, we're looking for military and police officers."
Yep.
So she said, "You'll take a pay cut," which I did. But I was saying it didn't matter to me, right? It really that didn't matter to me. I wanted to join the terrorism fight, and this is the best way I knew how. So I went through the process, passed the rest of the process, passed phase two, passed the background, and I found myself in Quantico in October. I contacted her in March. October of 2002, I was in Quantico.
Is the one of the things that at least I hear is that the training that the federal agents receive is kind of next to none. It's excellent. It's the best of the best. Is that the case when you went through Quantico?
I can say that wholeheartedly. That is my third academy. The first two training I received in the police academy at California Department of Justice, they were great. They were real professionalized training, but Quantico is a different level. It's all science-based. It's all research-based. You have schooling in the morning and then shooting or defensive tactics in the afternoon. And if you can imagine, you have a group of type A's in a room. Right. And the only thing that separates us is the degrees of type A you are. So, so there's a lot of doing your things on your own to make yourself better than your people next to you, right? Or in some cases, stay with them, right? So you're not left in there. But from our shooting, everything is, everything is researched, to arrest techniques, to the Constitution, the constitutional law. Everything that is in Quantico is designed for a purpose, and it's I think it's the world's finest.
It's interesting you're the first, I'm just glorious that I've been able to convince you to come on, but you're the first the first FBI agent that we've had on the show. And I've seen when I've talked to federal agents, their demeanor is incredibly professional. It's succinct. It's measured. It's not bombastic. It's not, you're not telling stories. It's just very, by the way, it's very investment banking. Very, very, very polished. So maybe that's the banker side of you that comes out. So what was your first posting? What was that like?
So I came back, I was living in Los Angeles and I wanted to come back to Los Angeles. I wanted to work in a big city. And Los Angeles had become home for me at that point. So I put in for, when you go to Quantico, you pick one. When I went through, you pick 1 through 56 field offices. So LA was number 2. Number 1 was New Haven. I thought I wanted to go to New York to work in the largest field office in the FBI. Right. But my own personal rule was that if I'd have to make a buddy there, and then because the pay is so low, would have to be roomies. And I wanted to live in New York City versus the surrounding areas. I didn't know I want to commute. That didn't happen. I had a friend at that time that was in LAPD, and he was from the East Coast, and he says, "Hey, go to New Haven. They have a lot of gang activity, and I can set you up with some friends there."
Okay.
Well, that was the thought. And then came winter, and I'm running around the track, and the snow's falling. And I thought to myself, "What am I doing? I love Los Angeles. I love the warm weather. I don't like cold weather. I can't stand cold weather." And so 6th week you get told where you're going. And thank God, LA. I was selected for LA, and so I came here to Los Angeles field office.
And that's what you've lived for, or at least that's where you've kind of resided, and where you've retired. Now, you mentioned, well, actually, I'm going to have 2 questions. One is, tell me the first kind of piece of work you can remember doing in Los Angeles, and then we'll actually just answer that, and then we'll talk about you going to even hotter areas of the world.
Yeah, so I worked terrorism. That's when we were grouping ourselves and really building up our JTTFs. So, at that time there was a lot of leads, a lot of false leads, but it gave you a rhythm, right? You attack this lead as it could be the real thing. We didn't know if it was not, and you get in that rhythm. And so then I got shifted over to, we broke it up with Al Qaeda and everything else, state sponsors of terrorism. So I specialize in state-sponsored terrorism, right? Iran, Syria.
Oh my goodness! And are you allowed to talk about any threats that you were able to stop in Los Angeles, or is that, I don't know what you're allowed to talk about or not talk about?
Yeah, there was a big case where they had arrested uh, a um, a person that was a former officer of the IRGC, and there was a bigger plot of just kind of setting up. Um, what I can say is setting up a base, not much of a base, but a group here for their use if ever needed.
Oh my, this is Homeland. this is this is Homeland. Lord, was that scary? Frankly, I mean, it's exhilarating in the sense that you're actually having real impact, but what that you would actually that a foreign entity would try to establish a base in the United States? Was
Yeah,
that
and I said base, recruit group of individuals, right? Not
right?
a physical base itself. Yeah, it was exhilarating because it was right after 9/11, and
Yep.
the last thing we want is more of it, right? Um, you come in with I came in with a sense of purpose that I was going to do what I can to protect this great nation of ours.
Fantastic. And um, that then led over years and decades to then going to a much hotter spot. I mean, I would imagine if you love the heat, then going to Jordan. So tell us about the post in Jordan.
Yeah, so let me take you back a little bit one more, right?
Please.
Uh, so I was here as an agent, and I promoted to headquarters in the terrorism section, and that was managing programs throughout the U.S. You're the go-between between Department of Justice and our headquarters, and just making sure the program is running well. And those were long hours. Um, from there, I thought to myself, well, I've been in city, I've worked for the state, I'm working federally. It'd be nice to go internationally. And
Yep.
that was one of my goals when I came to the FBI was to go overseas. So so you do what they call a tryout. You take two short assignments overseas to see how you do out there. How do you blend in with the local service, with the embassy?
Right.
Overseas is not for everyone. Yeah, it really isn't. And then are you a value? Right. Again, the FBI does things that make sense. Right. Uh, and that's how they selected personnel. So I did my two tours. I did it in Abu Dhabi and Doha, and I came back, and I loved being out there. I loved working there with the local service, and the Jordan office was open, and I had put in for Jordan and a couple other offices, and it seemed that Jordan was the one because of my specialty in my of terrorism was the most uh, logical choice to put me there, and that was during Arab Spring.
Oh, goodness gracious. So a lot of activity in that context.
A lot of activity. So the Jordanians, you work in the embassy, you work with all the services, and for us, a lot of it is working with the Jordanians on getting information across. Right, the Jordanians are a very professional service, and uh, it was a lot of hours. So I mean, just to make clear, I'm not operating there. I am a declared FBI person that goes between the Jordanian government and the FBI. Or the
Okay.
Jordanian service and the FBI. And as you know, the terrorists are travelers and they do travel across the world. And so that information exchange has to be there with all the other countries.
So you're working with the local authorities to identify potential threats, and then identifying if those threats are kind of heading our way, so to speak. And then
That is very correct. The whole idea was to go overseas and get the optic back to the U.S. What is happening out here that may affect the U.S. or if a person may travel to the U.S. And we don't want to miss that.
and that's different than what the CIA construct. Do you spend any time with CIA operatives in those countries, or you're not allowed to say?
No, CIA has a different lane than what we do. Their intelligence collection
Right.
apparatus, and then they're in their different lane. I am looking strictly from a law enforcement perspective back to the U.S. Now,
Interesting.
um, do I know them? Did we? Sure, right. We're all in an area, right? But did I do something with them on their operations? No, not at all.
And I think maybe it's kind of church and state. It's better that you guys kind of divide and conquer, and to your point, you stay in your own swim lanes. It's different missions.
Yeah, everything I do is, when you take it to the court, it's discoverable. Right. Everything's recorded. Everything's discoverable. They're in a different area of what we do. What is done is not the same exact thing.
Yeah, you're kind of you're on the same big team, but with very different. It's like a NBA versus the NHL. So to speak.
Correct. We're looking from a angle of prosecution, right? We're building a case. We're trying to prosecute individual or individuals.
You've spent part of your time in managing or dealing with hostage situations, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, correct. So that was recent. I was selected to be the director of the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell. So when we say a cell, it is an interagency cell. It is administrated by the FBI, but it's housed within the FBI for I guess the lack of a better word is because it's administered by the FBI, so it only makes sense it's within the FBI. But if you can imagine, there's three parts of the cell, right? So one is the interagency cell, so Department of Defense and everything that comes underneath there, CIA, NSA, and other agencies, military. And these are analysts. They're there. Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and then you have the Department of State representatives that are there, and the FBI. Right. So it's a fusion cell. We are pulling out every information we can from our buckets and putting it together and pushing it up to the general community.
Okay.
The hostage cell was created in 2014. And if you remember, tragically, you had the Beatles where they murdered a few Americans.
Yep.
Back then, the hostage area was new to us, right? And we didn't have, unlike War on Terrorism, where all the walls are collapsed and everybody's talking, and the hostage area is very small groups of people are working it, and information was being, stovepiped. Not purposefully, but just the way the system is set up. And we also didn't have a system in place to where we can declassify information and give it to the family. So the families were having a heck of a time trying to get information from the government. Back then, President Obama realized this and asked for the creation of the Hostage Response Group. So you can imagine three parts. One is the National Security Council. The other part of the Department of State, the SPIA, the Special Presidential Envoy to Hostage Affairs, and that is Steve Witkoff right now, right? And then the cell itself. So the cell's divided into three. One deals with the family. So you have a psychologist. So if a person is held hostage, they come back. We have a psychologist that can try to make them become whole and work in society. We have social workers that can help the family during the process and are the voice of the family. And then the American Citizen Services, they can help the ease of bringing that person back in. We also have a negotiator and a few other folks that can help specifically the victim. Then we have the cell that grabs the information, puts it in a format, and sends it to the White House. And then the FBI team. Anytime an American citizen is held abroad as a hostage, we open a case. In that case, we will try to bring the person to justice. So one of the members of the Beatles was brought to justice and is convicted here in the United States.
How many hostages are taken? How many people American citizens are taken hostage outside the United States a year? I wouldn't even.
That number ebbs and flows. I mean, so there's two categories. There's kidnapping, which is different. There's also three categories, rather. Wrongful detention, where the country holds them. They admit they're holding them, right? And that's a State Department issue. That's not our issue at all. And then hostages are whether a terrorist group or a country holds them without admitting they're holding them. And those numbers ebb and flow over the years.
But give me a range. Is it 10,
Uh,
100?
I mean, no, it's not in the hundreds. That number is classified of how
Okay.
many hostages are there, but just keep in mind for our purposes, right? Even if they're deceased, we still consider them a hostage until we bring them back to the family.
And you continue to work. I mean, you mentioned the work you did in Israel. You continue to you do that, and you don't stop until you can bring the remains back.
That's correct.
That's
That's
amazing.
correct. Yeah, and in the group of individuals, and I will say this, right? They're the most that I worked with are the most inspiring, right? It's that job itself is it you deal with the family, and you want to do what you can to help them out as the best you can. But the issue is there's the hostage takers, and they get a say in this whole equation, and um, it's not as easy as one would think. If you think about the Israeli hostages, that issue that took over 2 years to resolve. Right? It's not something that's done that fast, and as time goes by, information becomes less and less and less. We always, regardless, we're still looking at the problem set. Um, uh, as soon as new information comes in, we look to see if there's a thread we can pull on, and is there a way we can bring this person back?
It's inspiring. There's a lot of negative criticism about the U.S. government. Maybe some justified, who knows? But when you think about how your tax dollars are used to do these kinds of things, when Americans are really in need, right? This is it is the ultimate, not it's the ultimate way to respond and to take care of your own citizens. I think I mean, that's truly inspiring, the amount of resources dedicated for this most worst of worst situations.
That's true, and there are also NGOs, right? I don't want to say that the NGOs don't help. NGOs do help us. What we can provide to the victim families is there's a limit, and some NGOs come in and they do like a blanket coverage, right? They will help. They will help them with what we can't help them with. So there is that partnership. When I was there, we rekindled those relationship with the NGOs to make sure the victim family is getting as much as they can assistance, because I mean, put ourselves in that situation. Somebody we love has been captured overseas, right? And then you get thousands of phone calls, people who've seen them, people they're calling in, and they're not real players in the whole game, and giving you false information. But it's just a terrible. It's a terrible time for that person.
Well, you've seen, I mean, Savannah Guthrie and what her and her family have gone through with her mother is a perfect example of that in a U.S. context, right? To see that anguish, and so what a thank you for what you do and what you've done. I have, sadly, I could be here for an hour. I don't want to monopolize the rest of your day. I've got two questions. The second to the last question is, if you're talking to someone who'd never dealt with the FBI, what would be the one misconception that you'd like to straighten out, and then what would be the one thing that you'd like to reinforce? Something that they may think that you'd like to say, yeah, that actually is true.
So, at least in the movies, my wife pointed this out, they always make us look rude and arrogant, right?
Okay.
Like we're not. We're here to help. We care about the country, and when you're dealing with the FBI, it's just like dealing with law enforcement. What you put in is what you get out, right? They're there to help you. They're professionals. Um, I can't say enough about the Bureau. I think it was a great organization. It's a very sad day when I left. I'm still sad at some days, but they're there to help. The part I want to reinforce is, and I've always said this when I said this in my retirement, I got to run with some amazing people, to be part of that amazing group that I never thought I would get to run with. There's some amazing talent in there that just they could make a lot of money on the outside world doing anything they wanted to. but they're doing this because of the love of the country and love of the mission, right? There's some great people in there, and I would like to reemphasize that. Just I was talking about the my HRFC group. When I left, I felt like I left my family. I still do. I think of all the hours we spent together and the people that were there. They're dedicated. If you get to know me, I show up anywhere between to work 5:45 to 6:30. There were times where they were polite enough to beat me in, to open the door, make sure everything's working, and with a cup of coffee, right? And just great patriot Americans, right? There's great patriots that care about the country, they care about the people, and you don't see that because we're isolated from. Unlike police departments where you're interacting with the public every day, they can see that. We're not. We're looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, no, there's hundreds of thousands of these folks, millions of, you think about Navy SEALs, or you think about SEAL teams, or you think about the CIA, or you think about the U.S. Marshals. They're all toil as they should, as they want to toil in anonymity, but they're, to your point, they're the best of the best, and they're absolutely the highest mission-driven folks I've ever met. Well, I'm sad to say this is the last question, Rajiv. We try to make a small donation in your honor to a charity of your choice for taking the time to share your thoughts and your perspectives with us. What charity can we make a donation for?
Look, my favorite charity is Wounded Warriors. We ask these folks to go everywhere in the world without question, right? And they come back sometimes not whole. And to me, they're my heroes, right? My sacrifices, I think, are nowhere close to what they've sacrificed.
Well, we'd be honored to do that. Folks, this has been so inspiring, so fascinating. I'm going to probably ask Rajiv to come back and do section 2 of this. He is, it's why you're proud to be an American. It's why you're happy to pay your taxes, because the money goes to training, to recruiting, to equipping, to making sure these people can do, and they're there in a way that we never know. They're diffusing things before they happen. They're keeping us safe in a way that we can never understand, and they do it without they're not on social media. They're not kind of singing their praises. They're not beating their chest on YouTube. They're doing this for the love of country and the love and for the mission and for to defend the Constitution. It's such a privilege to talk to Rajiv. I'm on a high. So I must end though, and I must, as I always try to say, is I'm very excited to have done this episode of First Response. We are the #1 podcast in talking about the people behind the service, behind the FBI and the state and local police and all of the folks that keep us safe every day. I am privileged to do that, and I'm privileged, and I am privileged by and supported by Pepperball, the company where I have the privilege to be the chief executive officer. And again, we make non-lethal tools that police officers use so they don't have to use guns, and they use them instead of their guns to keep themselves and their public safe. So until next time, thank you so much for listening, and be safe out there.